You ever notice how when someone asks, like, what advice would you give your younger self? It's like, bam, your brain is just flooded with all these things you wish you knew back then.
Right.
Well, we're diving into that today, but with a bit of a twist.
Ooh, I like twists.
We're going to be using that wisdom from the past to make your present life even better.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me how the advice we give our younger selves, it often kind of points to these universal things that we crave as people, connection, growth, purpose.
Yeah, for sure. And we have this great article here called The Best Advice You Could Give Yourself Today that digs into all of that. So as you're listening to this, think about that advice you'd give to your younger self. Like, what were some of the challenges that you were facing back then?
Yeah.
Are any of those still kind of popping up even in different ways now?
Because here's the thing. That advice isn't just for nostalgia.
Very
It's
good.
really a roadmap. It's highlighting areas where you've always wanted to grow, which means it's probably still relevant today.
Yeah.
It's just the how you apply that advice now. That's where things get interesting.
Ooh, okay. So the article gives this cool framework for actually like putting this advice into action, and they call it recognize, implement, and course correct.
Yeah.
So let's break that down a little bit. What do we mean by recognize?
Well, recognize is all about getting real with yourself. It's asking, am I still struggling with the same issue even if it looks different now? Like, let's say you tell your younger self to believe in yourself because you were constantly doubting your abilities. Are you still doing that today in your career or relationships? That's the pattern that we really need to
So it's
recognize.
not just about remembering the advice, it's about seeing how it applies to your life right now. Hmm. Okay, so then that leads us to implement. So what are we actually doing with this like new awareness?
Exactly. It's about translating that advice into an action you can take. It's not enough to think, oh, yeah, I should be more confident. What does that look like in your daily life? Maybe it's speaking up more in meetings or finally starting that creative project you've been putting off.
Yeah, and I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, right? They have the advice, they know it's good, but actually making the change, that's a whole other ballgame.
Absolutely. And that's why the course correct step is so important. It's about learning from your past attempts, the successes and the failures. Let's say you tried to be more assertive in the past, but it kind of backfired. Why? What can you learn from that experience to course correct your approach now?
Hmm, that's a good point. This reminds me of a part in the article that really stuck with me. He talks about this advice, stop worrying about what others think. And maybe your younger self needed that because of peer pressure or a specific toxic friend, but the article was saying even if those people are gone, the lesson remains relevant.
That's such a powerful point because it's about recognizing that the people and situations may change, but the underlying patterns in our own behavior, those tend to stick around.
Yeah.
So are there current relationships or situations where you're still letting the opinions of others hold you back?
That's a great question for everyone listening to consider, yeah.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how this whole deep dive isn't just about looking back. It's about using the past to inform the present.
Right?
It's like we're taking that old advice and giving it a fresh coat of paint,
Yeah.
you know, making it relevant for who we are today.
And I think that's where the real magic happens. It's not about clinging to the past, but rather using it as a springboard to launch ourselves into a more fulfilling future.
I like that, the springboard, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about recognizing the patterns, implementing changes based on that advice that we give our younger selves. But how do we know if the advice itself is still valid? Like, what if what we needed back then isn't what we need now?
Ooh, that is such an insightful question because it really highlights how personal growth, it's not linear. What might have been crucial advice in our 20s might need some tweaking, or even a complete overhaul as we gain experience and our priorities shift.
Totally. Right, like telling my younger self to take more risks was all about pushing past fear and exploring those new possibilities. But now taking risks might mean something totally different, like investing in a new business venture or speaking up against injustice.
Yeah.
Like the core idea is still there, but how it manifests has changed with time.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, the only constant is change.
Hmm.
The key is to just stay flexible, to be willing to reevaluate our beliefs and approaches as we evolve. And sometimes that means letting go of advice that no longer serves us.
Yeah, totally. So it's not about blindly following the same advice forever. It's about adapting it to our current circumstances
Hmm.
and using it as a guide, not a rigid rule book.
Hmm.
This actually reminds me of something you mentioned earlier about learning from past mistakes.
Hmm.
And the article talked about how that applies not only to our actions, but also to our relationships.
That's such a crucial point. It's easy to get caught up in the specific people or situations from our past. But what's more important are the lessons that we learn from those experiences. You might have advised your younger self to break up with a toxic partner. Maybe that specific person is gone, but the lesson remains, are there current relationships that are draining your energy or holding you back?
It's like we develop this internal radar for those patterns, you know. We might not even realize it, but we're constantly scanning our environment
Mm.
and looking for those familiar red flags or warning signs based on our past experiences.
Precisely. And that's where the course correct step comes in again. We can use that awareness to make different choices this time around. Maybe we set clearer boundaries, communicate our needs more effectively, or simply choose to walk away from situations that don't align with our values.
I love that. Yeah, it's like we're building this internal library of wisdom,
Yeah.
and each experience adds another volume to the collection.
Hmm.
And as we add more volumes, we become more discerning, more adept at navigating the complexities of life.
What's really fascinating is that this process isn't just about ourselves, it's also about how we can use our hard-won wisdom to help others. Remember that call to action part of the article? It challenged us to share our insights with those who might benefit from
Oh,
them.
yeah, the pay it forward idea. Totally.
Uh,
Yeah, once we've unlocked this inner wisdom, why keep it to ourselves, right? Who knows how our experiences might resonate with someone else who's going through something similar?
Imagine if we all approached life with this mindset, constantly learning, growing, and then sharing those insights with others. It's like we're creating this collective pool of wisdom that we can all draw from.
I love that. It's like we're all interconnected in this journey of self-discovery and growth. And by sharing our stories and lessons, we can support and empower each other along the way.
And you never know, the simple act of sharing might even help you solidify your own understanding and commitment to that advice. It's like teaching something is the best way to truly learn it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's like we're constantly refining and deepening our understanding as we share it with others. Hmm. So for those listening, think about who in your life might benefit from hearing the advice you'd give your younger self. It could be a friend, a family member, a colleague, or even a complete stranger.
You never know the impact your words might have. It could be the spark that ignites someone else's journey of growth and transformation. And in a way, it completes the cycle. We learn from our past, we apply that wisdom to our present, and then we share it to shape the future, both for ourselves and those around us.
I love that. That's beautiful. It's amazing to think about how our experiences can kind of have like a ripple effect, you know?
Totally.
Like maybe that piece of advice that you share with someone today ends up helping them make a huge life change, like way down the line.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this whole concept, isn't it? It's like we're not just these isolated individuals on our own separate journeys. Our lives intersect in ways that we can't even imagine. And the wisdom that we gain along the way has the potential to impact so many other people.
It's like we're all weaving this tapestry together, with each thread representing like our unique experiences and insights. And by sharing those threads, we create something that's so much richer and more vibrant than any of us could achieve on our own.
And sometimes without even realizing it, we're already sharing this wisdom. Think about that example that the article gave, telling your younger self to stop worrying about what other people think. Aren't we demonstrating that in our own lives every time we make a bold choice or stand up for what we believe in?
That's so true, yeah. It's like our actions become a form of advice in themselves. Like people are watching even when we don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're learning from our courage, our resilience, our willingness to embrace the unknown.
Which brings us to this really powerful question that the article ends with. It asks you to imagine that you have the chance to share your hard-won advice with someone who desperately needs it right now. So who would that person be and what would you tell them?
Wow, that's a really thought-provoking question. It forces us to really think about what truly matters. You know, what lessons have we learned that could make a real difference in someone else's life?
Take a moment to really sit with that. Who pops into your mind? What wisdom, based on your own experiences, could help them navigate whatever challenge they're facing?
It might be a younger version of yourself, or maybe it's someone you know who's struggling with something that you've already overcome.
And it doesn't have to be some grand sweeping statement. Sometimes the most impactful advice is simple, direct, and heartfelt.
Yeah, like just reminding someone of their strengths,
Yeah,
or encouraging them to keep going even when things feel tough.
exactly. Because at the end of the day, that's what this whole deep dive is about. Recognizing the power of our past experiences, both the good and the bad, and using them to create a more meaningful present, both for ourselves and for those around us.
It's about embracing that journey of lifelong learning, constantly evolving and sharing those insights with others to make the world a little brighter, a little wiser, a little more connected.
So, as we wrap up today's deep dive, remember that the conversation doesn't have to end here. Keep exploring these ideas, keep asking questions, keep sharing your wisdom.
Because the more we learn, the more we grow, and the more we share, the more we create a world where everyone has the tools they need to thrive. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. So we've been talking about this idea of taking the advice we'd give our younger selves and using it to level up our lives today. But there's another layer to this whole thing that I think is so fascinating. It's the idea that this wisdom, these lessons we've learned, they can actually have a ripple effect outward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, planting a seed.
Hmm.
You nurture it, it grows, and then it produces more seeds that can spread and create even more growth.
I love that analogy. So how do we become those seed planters?
Wow.
How do we take what we've learned and actually share it in a way that makes a difference?
Well, I think it starts with just being open to those opportunities. Sometimes they come up in unexpected ways, like just a casual conversation with a friend. Or maybe it's through mentoring someone at work, or even just sharing our stories online.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that it doesn't have to be this big formal thing, right? Like we don't have to have all the answers or be some kind of guru to share what we've learned.
Exactly. Sometimes the most impactful advice comes from just being real and sharing our own struggles and triumphs. It's about letting people know that they're not alone in their journey.
And what's interesting is that sometimes we might be sharing this wisdom without even realizing it.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like the article talked about how telling our younger selves to stop worrying about what others think. Well, aren't we living that advice every time we make a choice that goes against the grain or speak up for what we believe in?
100%. Our actions really do speak louder than words.
Yeah, and people are always watching, even when we think they aren't. So just by being ourselves, by living authentically, we're already planting those seeds.
And that brings us to a really powerful question that the article ends with. It asks, imagine you have the chance to share your hard-won advice with someone who desperately needs it right now. Who would that person be, and what would you tell them?
Hmm. Wow. That's a really powerful question. It kind of makes you stop and think about, who are the people in your life that you could really make a difference for?
Right.
It could be someone you know personally, or maybe even someone you've never met before.
And it doesn't have to be this big, elaborate thing. Sometimes the simplest words can have the biggest impact.
Yeah. Like just offering a word of encouragement or reminding someone of their strengths.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, that's what this whole journey is about, isn't it? It's about learning from our experiences, sharing those lessons with others, and creating this ripple effect of positive change that can spread far and wide.
I love that. It's like we're all in this together,
Yeah.
supporting each other, lifting each other up.
And creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, it's been an amazing conversation.
But remember, the journey doesn't end here, right? Keep exploring these ideas. Keep asking those tough questions. And most importantly, keep sharing your wisdom with the world.
Because you never know whose life you might touch.
Thanks for joining us.